Okay, some people have asked me about editing large manuscripts with AI. All right. So, like with Waking Anton, it was 317 pages. So, how did I edit it? Well, I'm working on Saving Gabe right now. That's our next book, and what, basically this is my process. Once I get that first draft done, I'm going to give it a quick read, and I'm going to make some of my own notes on there, and then I'm going to run it through Chat GPT. Now it's probably going to end up around 300 pages. So how exactly am I going to do that? Because if you give a 300-page document to Chat GPT, it's going to look at that document and it's going to just skim and at best give you some kind of summary. It's not going to do any kind of real in-depth look at it. So what you need to do is you need to take that big document and cut it up. What I would do is take my EPUB and I would turn it into a PDF, and then I would use Adobe and just split that up into like 15-page chunks. Now, ChatGPT can probably take in a little bit more than that in one shot, but I found the most success with about 15 pages per document. So, what did I do with those? I mean, I've got all these split up files. What do you do with all these split up files? So, the first thing I would do is I would have it read the first one. And when it got done, I would ask it to identify 5 different reader types that would enjoy that story. And then I had it at a 6th one called a harsh critic. And the harsh critic's job is to be kind of a combination of all of those reader types, but also keep an eye out for things like grammar issues, spelling issues, plot issues, narrative flow issues, pacing. So it kind of keeps an eye on those things, all right? And then I ask it to give me a rating of 1 to 100 for each one of those reader types in 3 different metrics, and I let it choose the metrics. I just say in 3 different metrics that will help us evaluate how our document is and the kinds of changes we might need to make to it to improve it. And it would roll through that, and then it would shoot me out a little report. And I would have it put it into a text file so I could download it. And then I just go through that process where I would give it the next file, have it do the same thing, the next file, have it do the same thing, next file, same thing. And then I end up with a whole bunch of these little text files, okay? You got a couple of choices there with the text files. You can go through and read all of them, which I actually suggest. You know, go through, kind of look at what your notes are and everything on each of your pieces. Uh, you can also take those, feed them back into ChatGPT, and have it give you summaries so that you can kind of identify in different areas where you need to improve on. But basically, once you have all of that information, that's telling you what your document's like in the eyes of simulated other people. Okay, so if it gives you a score of like 60 in your narrative flow and pacing, then you know you have a major problem with your narrative flow and pacing. And sometimes when you're getting ChatGPT to write things for you, and maybe you're copy and pasting, that can happen because you might have accidentally copy and pasted like the wrong stuff, or you got it in there twice. So those things can be identified through this process, and you can kind of clean up all of that. You can identify some of your spelling issues. You can identify any kind of grammar issues. Make sure your character development, that's something else I do. I have the harsh critic do watch for character development, make sure that the characters match up with the way they're described in the character doc, make sure the locations are described properly. So it's basically a consistency check going through. So I wouldn't say this is like having a real human editor doing it, but as it goes through, it can help you identify those areas, and then you can take those chunks of the text, feed it back into it with those sets of notes, and have it help you clean those pieces up, straighten those out. Maybe all you need to do is insert pieces. That's what I found most of the time, is I needed to expand the scenes by having more dialogue, or by perhaps changing a couple of pieces of the prose. So I would basically have it do that based off of its notes. I'd feed both those things back in, ask it to do it, it would kick it back out, and then I'd copy paste, put it back in. There were probably only about 14 things I had to do with Waking Anton that were like that, but I did go through the entire document, and it did give me a really good idea on that first draft of where I was at on things. So after I did that first machine edit, we kind of cleaned up that doc again. I went through that process again, the whole thing. Went through the whole deal, spitting all the files through, getting my ratings on things, and I made little tweaks this time. I would change a few words, or I would add a sentence to the end, and you'd be amazed at how much power. I mean, go read it yourself. You read a thing, and then you change that line at the very end of it to set up for that next chapter, or to really draw your reader into your characters and stuff. So I like doing a lot of that at the end, and it definitely definitely has an impact on the narrative, does make it a little bit better. And Chat GPT, it can help you kind of identify some of those things and determine whether or not this line is better than that line if you want to get really into the nitty gritty of it, helping you edit it out. But with Waking Anton, I ran through that process twice, and then the last thing I did was I went through and I did a human edit. And I found some misspellings in there, and I'm sure those were mostly from me, but I'm pretty sure ChatGPT will occasionally send out a misspelled word of some kind. Usually it's a commonly misspelled word, so I think it gets it out of its training model or training data. So I went through, I did kind of a human edit. Like I say, there was a few things I had to correct and fix there. After I got done with that, I turned it into my final EPUB, got it up on Amazon, and I read it again on Amazon. And can you believe it? On the very first page, there was a missing quote. So I've changed all my prompts to make sure that my harsh critic is checking for punctuation as well. So that's a little tip for you there. Make sure you have your harsh critic checked for your punctuation as well as your narrative flow and grammar and other things like that. So for me, that's how I kind of edit using AI or ChatGPT, and that's kind of the process I think I'll follow with Waking Gabe. If I change anything on that, I'll definitely let you know. Anyway, thanks a lot. I hope this helps.